Five, four, three, two, one. Hi, everyone. Welcome to That Real Estate Podcast with Henry Matthews. This week, I have Alex Powell as our guest. Before I get started with that, I wanted to touch on a few things from last week and thank everyone again who's taken the time to watch the videos. We started a Instagram page about 2 weeks ago, and I think we're at this point over 250 followers, which is quite awesome. I'm quite proud of that. And I want to thank everyone who's taken the time to connect with us that way. I've also gotten some emails from viewers as well, suggesting topics and guests that they might want on. I want to encourage anybody that has anything that you'd like me to talk about or anyone you'd like me to interview, please go ahead and email me. That email will be in the description below. And again, if you like this video, please go ahead and like and subscribe. It really helps out. Subscribing and hitting the notification bell will enable you not to miss any videos as they come out. You'll be notified right away and you'll be able to watch them. And again, like I said, that really helps out the show. But to get started, here is Alex Powell. I've known Alex for a while. Go ahead and say hello to everybody, Alex.
Hello, hello. Thanks so much for having me on, Henry.
Alex just released a book, and that's why I wanted to have him on the show. The book's called Get Your Foot in the Door.
Getting your foot in the door.
Getting your foot in the door. Did I mess that up?
That's okay. That's
okay.
The point is to get your foot in the door, so it's not far off.
That's the point, right?
Yeah.
So I asked Alex to come on and talk about the book. So yeah, Alex, how did you come up with the idea to write a book?
Well, funny enough, it was actually, it's taken a lot of time. I've always thought that it would be relevant to help people who just want to learn how to get started in the whole process. I used to have a lot of phone calls with people and a lot of coffees with people that were asking kind of the same questions over and over again. Not the same people, but you get the same conversations like, oh, what'd you do to start? Or how do you do this? Or what happens if I don't have any money? Like, what do I do? What happens if I don't have any time to invest? It's the same kind of thing. So I thought that it would be a good idea to try and compile a short, quick, easy read of a book that could give people these key nuggets as to, taking a step forward in order to help themselves gain more financial education, understand a high level of the theories that are out there in terms of like the different strategies of real estate, and then overall get excited about the whole idea of real estate investing, because I know a lot of people can be very intimidated by it, but I think that it helps to kind of understand that we all start somewhere and we're all a little bit different. So if we can kind of take one step forward, get our foot in the door, and work towards creating a better financial future for ourselves and our families, of course.
One of the things you talk about in the book is the lack of education that most people have about investing, saving, money in general. How important do you think it is for people to get educated in those subjects?
It's vital. I think it's probably one of the more important things to learn. It's funny that I'm a huge proponent, I'm a huge supporter of education. I think that education is important. And I also think that the right education is important. I think a lot of people nowadays go to post-secondary education because they just don't know what they should be doing. So they go and get a university degree because they're not ready to enter the workforce. And it's just education. They're learning how to dissect a frog or how to, I'm like a half a course away from a minor in sociology. Like, I'm not a sociologist. I don't know what I would really do with that, but not to knock any sociologists out there if they are any. But in general, I think that it's kind of weird that our life, a big part of our life is earning an income that we can then support a family with, right? Would you agree with that?
100%.
Yeah. Yet we don't teach the fundamentals of how to do that. What they do teach, and I think they do a great job teaching, is how to fit into the system, the pre-established system that exists. So, I'd like to, be a doctor and then I can get a job as a doctor. And then I need to take these steps to become a doctor, right? or a tradesperson or whoever the thing is. But what about when I'm ready to buy a house? Who's going to teach me, about what a mortgage is? What about an amortization table? What about interest rates and the effects that they can have, you know, on how much you have to pay? What about credit cards and paying off debt and the importance of a credit score? These are things that it seems like people don't take a lot of they don't put a lot of weight into it for some reason. But what you do hear a lot of is like, oh, I just can't buy anything because the market's too expensive, or I don't have enough money, or all these things. And what it does is effectively hold those people back from taking action. And I'm not here to dispute the fact that the market's crazy and it's hard to tap into there, but it's not impossible, and there's a way to do it, and you just have to financially educate yourself.
Excellent. In the book, you talk about your first investment story. I want everyone to read the book, so I don't want to give too much away, but it really kind of stood out to me. Would you mind sharing that story with the viewers?
Yeah. So I grew up in Whitby, Ontario, and I actually, before I went off to university, I took a college course at Mohawk College in Hamilton, and I effectively fell in love with the city, and that's part of the reason that brought me back here after going off to university. So I was working a full-time job at Acon Industrial, and I had barely scraped together enough money, but I qualified for the first-time home buyer 5% down, and I bought this property on the Hamilton Mountain at $186,000. And of course, like I was shitting my pants. I didn't know what I was good, buying a house. Not just that, my parents, as great as they're, actually, they invest with me now because I've had to prove it over X amount of deals that I could actually do something with it. But at the time, they were so against this whole idea of me buying this house. They thought it was like the dumbest idea. So I didn't have that support either. Like, kind of felt a little bit alone at that time, I guess, because I had my mentor who I could lean on, and that was incredibly important. But even he wasn't a big fan of Hamilton at the time because he was an offshore guy. Anyway, I ended up buying this property, and I rented out the rooms, and evenings and weekends and after work, I would take my paycheck and I would buy building material from Home Depot, and I would slowly build up the basement to finish it, and I added a bathroom and a bedroom down there. So by the time I had the whole place rented out, I was living in that house and I was making like $600 a month or something like that. But while living in my own house. So if you consider the idea that most people go from paying rent to paying a mortgage, and often those you can say, let's just say those costs offset themselves, and the only difference is while paying a mortgage, you're paying down your own debt versus paying off a landlord's debt. In this situation, I was not only not paying rent anymore, but I was also profiting while paying down my own debt. So I think at the time I was like, I might be confusing the numbers if it was $550 that I was making or whatever, but about $1,100 or so dollars I was actually netting at the end of the day while living in my own house, which is crazy to think about that, right?
It's pretty insane. You mentioned that you bought that house for $186,000.
Yeah.
If that was your first project, what's your last project? Like, what are you currently working on, or what have you just finished?
Well,
comparatively,
like we just bought a single family. Let's just say, to compare apples to apples, there's a property that's about the same size on the east end down the mountain, and we just bought it for $265, and it's an absolute dump. So it still has to be renovated top to bottom. But I know that for a fact that the property that we have on the Hamilton Mountain right now, it reappraised 2 years ago at $425.
Wow.
Yeah.
425. So from 186 to 425, and that's in a span of how long?
It was 6 years, I think, maybe.
That's
that property bad. Allowed, like that singular property allowed, paid for the construction costs of what Kaylee and I bought, I guess what we would call like our dream house right now where we live. And we did a second story addition on this property. So we bought, like, once again, another crap hole, and we took the roof off and we went up a second story. So now we have a 2-level. And that first property that I ever bought that still cash flows, and I still own it to this day, paid for that whole renovation.
When you were starting out, you mentioned that your family wasn't super keen on the idea and everything like that. Mostly just Hamilton, it sounded like, was the pushback. But what kind of books were you reading? Like, how were you educating yourself? Who were you talking to? Were you watching things? How did you kind of light the match to sort of get inspired to take action?
It's a good question, actually. I don't think it was so much more Hamilton. I think it's just like, God bless my mother, but she's a worrywart, and she always wants to make sure she's protecting us. I'm sure a lot of people have moms the same way. So it's not about doing something different. It's just stay the same, and I know you'll be safe. Don't do anything out of the norm.
That's
And
typical.
so, yes, it's pretty typical, right? And but at the end of the day, it's like I think about that, and then I think about now. We've got a little guy named James who's 15 months old, and I wonder, when he turns 19, 20 or whatever, and he's ready. Like we have properties that are already allocated to each kid or whatever, right? But when he's ready to go and actually buy something for himself or buy his first investment property, I think about what my approach is now being on this side of it. And I think that the goal is not to not do it. The goal is to do it right and to make sure that you're going to be okay. Because there's risk in anything we do. There's one of the things that my mom said, and I'll never forget, she'll hate me if she ever listens to this podcast, but she said, what happens if you get hit by a bus? Who's going to pay your mortgage for you? Right? And it was a great point. And the reality of it is, my tenants, they literally, if I could totally get hit by a bus right now and my tenants would keep paying my mortgage. If I had a job and was living in that house and I got hit by a bus, I would be pretty screwed, I think. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Totally. So it actually is, it's funny now that you think about it, not getting hit by a bus. And I apologize to anybody who's being hit by a bus, but hopefully they're few and far between. But sorry, back to your question. Refresh my memory here a little bit.
I wanted to know sort of what books you may have read when you started out.
Yes.
Were you? I know the YouTube and stuff wasn't really what it is now, but were you watching anything? Were you watching any shows?
So back when I first got started, there was no YouTube. There was none of that. So, which actually makes me feel so old to just say that out loud, first and foremost.
I feel that way every day.
It's funny. Some people are driven by different things, and I think that like finances and trying to figure out ways to climb the ladder to the next challenge was always something that drove me. Like I've never been someone to sit on the sidelines and just kind of watch things happen. So it actually happened when I was about 16 years old. I went to the real estate expo in downtown Toronto, and it was an ex-cousin-in-law, I guess, of mine. He was married to a second cousin of mine. And at the time, I had gone and just helped him with some renovations in a triplex that he had. He was looking for people to come help paint. And it was on like a Saturday and a Sunday. And I volunteered at the time. I was just a young chap or whatever, but just to like roll walls and stuff like that. And he, it was his first investment as well. And I think that he really appreciated it. And as kind of a thank you, he had 2 of these like VIP tickets. And now I know that they're free tickets, right? It's not like you pay for them. But regardless of that, it was like, I was very honored that he had thought of me when he could have taken any of his buddies or done anything like that, or he could have gone with someone that was closer to his age. But he decided to take me along, who was like, probably 10 years younger than him, right? Just a kid at the time. So we went to this expo together. Funny enough, Donald Trump was one of the keynote speakers at this event. I'm not even kidding you.
Really?
This is way before his like presidential campaigns. And but anyway, it was just a note. Tony Robbins was also there. George Foreman was there talking about his boxing match. It was just a very kind of inspirational. There's some heavy hitter guys there that were like high-end real estate investors in Toronto that were just talking about like some of their super exciting projects that they were doing. And it was like, I remember walking out of there just like vibrating, because I was like, I never knew that this existed. I thought that my trajectory was to go and get a job. And at the time I was working like crazy hours with my uncle, he owned a tool and die shop in Vaughan. And so we would, like during the summers, I would work 6, sometimes 7 days a week with them. And it was like long hours. So you really get a taste for like what the real world could look like is if you had to do that, right? And it could be tough, right? Especially I was like 16 years old, you know, going through the motions, like, is this the rest of my life? Is this what it's going to look like? You know, is like working crazy hours. At the time, I think I was making like $7.10 or something like that an hour. And it was wild. So when we had left there, my cousin who had, ex-cousin-in-law, he was an auto mechanic, and him and his father had an auto mechanic shop in downtown Toronto. And I would take my car there, and he would let me use his hoist, and he would let me use his tools, and I could change my own tires, and I could change my own filters and stuff like that, right? And we'd go upstairs, and we'd sometimes talk shop or what's going on. And at that point was when he gave me my first book, which was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And that book was just, once again, one of those books that I just ate the whole thing up. And then like I came back, I think like maybe like a week and a half later, I was like, I need another book. You need to give me something else. And so he gave me Real Estate Investing Using the Acre System by Don Campbell. Don Campbell is one of the founders of the Real Estate Investors Network in Toronto. Exceptional individual, actually. Don Campbell's someone that I very much hold up in a pedestal. He's just an exceptional human being and a very successful investor. And his book broke down the fundamentals of basic buy and hold real estate investing using the dialogue of like a storyline. I think it's Richard and Emma, if my memory serves me correctly. I haven't read that book in like 10 years. But yeah, it's a story about this couple who wants to get into real estate investing, and they kind of walk you through the motions, and they kind of systematize the process of buying real estate. And once again, like, you know, I'm at this point maybe 17 years old, right? 16, 17. And I'm trying to take in this information. I'm getting very excited about it, and I'm learning more about it. And then I started going to these like networking events. I used to like suit up as a kid. I had like this bright purple Hyundai accent, and I would drive around to these like free, sometimes marketing networking events where you would go to like, and they pitch you on their program, for example. And I didn't have any money. I literally couldn't buy anything. I don't even think I would be of age to sign a contract legally at the time, but I would go there and I would listen, and, you know, you collect the pamphlets, and I would take notes of the little nuggets that they gave. And I used to just love it. I loved it. And then as time progressed, as soon as I was done university, as soon as I actually made a deal with my parents, because I had student debt, and my student loan was like 7.5%, or it was actually a pretty substantial percentage. I'm sure most people have gone through those pains of paying off student debt. But I made a deal with my parents that when I was done school, if they could use their line of credit and pay off my student debt, then I would pay off their line of credit, which they weren't using anyway. So their line of credit was at like 3% interest or something. So I fast-tracked paying that off, saved as much money as I could, and then I put my first 5% down payment on that house on Fenwell Avenue as quickly as I possibly could. And not to mention, like, I looked at about 100 houses before then, my poor real estate agent, now understanding what that must have been like. But it was, I think I put $9,000 down as a down payment. So at that time, it was different. Nowadays, it's hard to match that, right? But that was kind of my trajectory into the whole thing. It was constantly pursuing education. And I think that the important thing is you have to be interested in it. And that's, I think, is sometimes the challenge, because as much as I love real estate investing, as much as I might be passionate about real estate investing, I think there's a lot of people out there it probably doesn't interest whatsoever. And that's fair. That's totally okay. I don't have interest in some other things that maybe other people do, right? I think, though, that even in school, when we aren't interested in a certain topic, we are still, you know, mandated to learn this topic because it's part of the trajectory of growth that our education systems deems to be necessary for us to go through. So I think that this should be included in that, so that people are become more aware of what needs to happen, what possibilities exist. Right? That's my 2 cents.
That's fair. As somebody with kids, I would definitely agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
And I've done everything I can to try and educate my kids as much as I possibly can about those topics as well. You talk about education being very important. How do you
For sure.
currently keep up to date on things? Are you reading any books? Um, what does, Alex 2020 do to kind of stay on top of his game?
Well, to be honest with you, right now, COVID's made that a little bit challenging because we have we're kind of isolated, right? But prior to COVID, Kaylee and I were very, very frequent networking event goers. So we would go to all kinds of networking events. And we're still very much a part of a lot of these network groups like RAIN, Right Club. I know there's OnCom, which Adney Fernandez hosts as well. Like these are all great sources of information. And you go there and you may know everything that the speakers, not saying you would know everything, but you may know a lot of stuff that is taking place already, right? But the point is that you want to associate yourself with people that have gone through different things than you, or they've gone through the same things but differently, right? And that's how you collaborate. That's how you get like more experience. That's how you learn from other people's mistakes. I think that networking in itself is probably one of the most important things that I couldn't stress that enough. And in the book, actually, I think I mentioned it a few times, how important it is to actually network.
In the book, you talk about like different roles that people play in a partnership. There's the money guy. People bring knowledge. Some people bring their time. Some people bring expertise. Correct me if I'm leaving anything out. What are 3 ways that people can get involved in a partnership who, if they don't have any access to funds? I know in my mind, I would think that's probably the biggest barrier to people just assuming that they can't do anything.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the biggest barrier for people on the front end, at the initial onset, and I would agree with it. I think that there's a lot, like you need capital to be able to invest, theoretically speaking, and I think that you need to go through the process to understand it, but that's just theoretically. You don't have to have money. Problem is, I think that with having done a project and learning for yourself and having saved up to earn it and all that, I think that there's a learning curve that goes with that. But once again, it's not necessary. So, I mean, a couple of real key factors that I think are important to note, that a lot of people think that money is the challenging part to get, and that's not true. Money is super easy to get. What's really hard to get is a really smoking hot deal. And that's the cold hard truth. If I came to you, Henry, and I was like, listen, I've got a triplex. I just bought it for 150,000. Do you want to partner on it? Would you partner on it?
With you, yes.
But I think that a big part of what makes a smoking hot deal is your acquisition price, right? And
Yeah.
buying good deals, or buying even a deal that's not necessarily at a great acquisition price, but you can transform that deal into something that's going to be just a dynamite property. And that's like, the creative element that goes into these kind of things. But I think that people put a lot of weight into whether or not they have enough savings, and they don't put enough weight into the fact that they can add value elsewhere. Like wholesaling, for example. Wholesaling wholesaling is coming to Canada now. It was never a really huge thing. It was always allowed. Wholesaling was always being legal, but never kind of was coined. Almost like the BRRRR term, that strategy, the BRRRR strategy. it always existed. People did it all the time, but no one really coined that phrase until maybe like 5, 6, 7 years ago, right? That's when BRRRR became this like popular strategy. But wholesaling, for example, a wholesaler, like a good wholesaler, is like probably one of the most valuable people that you could ever have as part of like your network or your power team, because their sole job is to go look for properties that are substantially under market value. And then you can take those as an investor, and then you can pitch those deals to people and show them that there's an opportunity to make a great return on those properties. So wholesaling is one strategy that it includes. Imagine you're a person, for those people who don't know, by the way, I'm just going to kind of explain a quick scenario. You know, Henry, you own a property and that you're looking to sell it, and you don't want to go through the channels of real estate. You have to sell it in less than 30 real estate in terms of like agency, like listing the property and then waiting all that and then finding a buyer with a closing date, all that kind of stuff. You need to be out of that house in like 20 to 30 days. Your house is falling apart. It's not in great shape. You're kind of worried that people even came in here, they might judge you, or their safety might be in question, right? You need this place gone. So what you do is you find somebody who's willing to pay you cash for your property. Now there's a fee for that, and that fee is a discounted rate in terms of what you would buy the property for. And that's completely fine. Now let's say I come to you, you have this house, and I say, okay, Henry, I'm going to buy your house for $250,000. And you say, perfect, I'll take it. I'm out of here. Then before closing happens, I can go to Bob, who's an investor, and I can say, hey, Bob, I've got this deal. I'll sell you the rights to this contract for $270,000. So I'll net the 20 grand and he'll pay 270 and you'll still get your whole 250. Then everybody's happy, and it was almost like it was a brokered deal, right? That's what wholesaling effectively is. Now, a couple important notes with wholesaling. A wholesaler can't act as a real estate agent. They can't what's called bird dogging. But if assigning an agreement of purchase and sale is totally allowed, for those people who think it's not, there's literally like an OREA form that is called the assignment of agreement of purchase and sale. It happens all the time. We just need to learn a little bit more about it. And people often don't think it's like there's a possibility to, what, you mean someone just made 20 grand for passing a piece of paper over to another person? Yeah, happens all the time. And that's a way that you can literally get into the market with no money, literally $0. And you can make a ton of money.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And I think people would be shocked if they found out how often that kind of actually happens.
Totally.
I know a few people that kind of do that, and yeah, it is quite common. Sort of circling back to the book, what do you want people to take away from reading this book? Like, what is your hope for people that have, taken the time to read this? What do you want them to kind of feel? How do you want them to kind of maybe, move forward?
The goal of the book had one purpose. If you're looking for like a detailed analysis on any one particular strategy, it's not the right book for that. This book is for the person who has thought about real estate investing, is interested in real estate investing, has found that sometimes it's complicated and they get kind of lost in the details of it. It's a very short read. It's a quick and easy read. I use small words because I'm not a great writer at all. That book took me like a year to write, and it's like you can read it in probably 2 hours. But the goal of the book was to help people get their foot in the door. It was to take one step closer to determining what interests them. Real estate investing is like a lot of other things. You can specialize in different facets of real estate investing. You can be a guy who does BRRRRs or flips or buy and holds, or just brokering joint venture deals or wholesale, whatever the case may be. But it's those people who are like, oh man, I've got these RSPs that are making me 4% per year, and I want to be able to retire and make more money than nothing when I retire. Real estate investing is getting your foot in the door, and buying a rental property will take you leaps and bounds ahead of where you were, right? I personally think everybody should. I don't think it will be possible that way, but everyone should find a way and work towards it. And here's the reality, guys. It's hard. It's not easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it. Everyone won't do it is the reality, and it's because it's challenging to get there. But it can be done. It can be done. People do it all the time.
Are you planning on writing a second book, like maybe once you've gotten your foot in the door?
And your foot is now in the door.
What next?
The sequel. Yeah. I'm not sure. To be honest, as I said, writing doesn't come to me naturally. I really have to work on it really hard. I'm kind of I can be a flighty character. I don't have a long attention span. But that being said, never say never. I mean, if I look back a year ago even, and I don't think I could imagine we'd be here and hitting the certain goals that we're hitting. So I will never say never. So who knows? But for right now, I think getting your foot in the door, I think, is a great little read. And here's the thing, guys, it's free. Like, download it, read it, or don't, whatever. It's there for you. It's there as a tool. And I think it does a good job from a lot of people that we've now helped. Is really cool that, like, somebody who I see has downloaded our book. Then, as part of that, you can request like a free consult, and we have like a free 15-minute call if you have any sort of questions on things. And they have that call, and next thing you know, they go and buy a real estate investment property. And next thing you know, they're like, holy shit, I just made so much money and it wasn't that bad. No way. You don't say.
100%. Where can people download the book?
So if they go onto our website, which is www.palpropertysolutions.com, and that's PAL as in PAL, propertysolutions.com. On there at the top right, there's like a tab like on the website, and it's download the book or get the book or something like that. And they just put in their email address, and then it automatically ships the book to them. Like, it's like literally they'll get it in the first 10 seconds.
Awesome. So we're running a little long on time here. So for anybody watching, the next set of the questions I'm probably going to put into a second video with Alex. But I just want to thank him for the first part here and sort of talking about the book.
Yeah, no, thank you, man. It's a pleasure, and I know I can get chatting a little bit, but it's nice to be able to kind of catch up a little bit, and it's nice to be able to share some information. I really appreciate you giving me an opportunity to chat about the book, especially because I do feel that if we can add value into people's lives, the same reason you're doing these podcasts, I feel very strongly about the fact that when we add value into people's lives, we empower other people. And I know that kind of sounds a little bit cheesy, and mushy and all that, whatever, but there's a truth to that. And as a person who's gone through it, you can get a lot of gratification from doing it. Nowadays, like, we've proven to ourselves that we can do things. And yes, we're pushing ourselves every day, but it's that much more incredible when we're helping another young family or helping a retired couple who's like, not making ends meet, find a way to supplement their living expenses with cash flow. It'll blow your mind. I've had some of the most crazy heartfelt conversations with people that have like totally succeeded based on just a few key instructions, and it's completely changed the trajectory of their lives.